Before the trade deadline hits and all the madness begins in the baseball world, let's look at some more smart waiver wire ads before that time. I have 11 players to talk about, including several young hitting prospects. But first, we'll start with a guy who really should have been added a long time ago, and I was all over in the preseason. And the breakout, it looks like it's finally here. You know, always looking for that guy who's going to have that second half surge. It looks like Alex Kirilloff might be that guy. Since the All-Star break ended, which at this point is barely over a week ago, Kirilloff has 4 home runs and 13 RBIs. He's got first base locked down for Minnesota. He's up to 279 on the season. But the thing is, he's got this power. He's always had this massive power swing. Just hasn't been able to put it together because he's had so many injuries and some inconsistency. And now he's locked in. I've talked about him before, even during the season. I find it hard to believe he's still only 23% owned in Yahoo leagues. For whatever reason, if he's still out there, just go ahead and grab him now. And that brings me to another player that I was in love with in the preseason, one of my favorite sleepers among all hitters. Didn't really do enough to really be fantasy relevant in the first half. Stole some bases here and there, but now all of a sudden he decided, yeah, it's time to turn it on. That's CJ Abrams in Washington. If you're familiar with Abrams, you know he's a high-end prospect, part of the Juan Soto deal. This guy's one of the fastest players in baseball, period. Was the hit tool there? Was he ready to be an everyday starter? This guy was very young when he was thrust into the major league level. Like I said, just kind of an average first half, but then something happened actually right before the All-Star break. On July 6th, that night, he stole 2 bases, and ever since then, 2 things happened. Number 1, he got moved to the leadoff spot, and then number 2, he just decided he was going to keep stealing a base almost every night. This looks like a very obvious change in approach from Washington, putting him where he should have been all along this whole season, in the top part of the order, and just having him run whenever possible. It's working because since July 6th, including that night, he has 10 steals. And he's just coming off a 2-hit night, including a home run. I mean, he's got a little bit of pop, but man, if he can help you with average plus steal a ton of bases, this could be the second half version of Esteury Ruiz, who was doing that in Oakland. All right, but I promised you some young players, so here we go. And probably the biggest headliner of the past week, because another Reds prospect, here we go, Christian Encarnacion Strand. This guy has massive power. He's kind of similar to Mark Vientos in New York, but we'll see if he actually turns out to hit the ball, which Vientos hasn't done yet, although he did go deep tonight. CES looks like he's going to get a shot just like every other Reds prospect. I mean, they'll fit him in somewhere. He's played some third base. Of course, he can play DH. Spencer Steer, who was having a really strong first half, has been in and out of the lineup. So anyways, look, if he hits, he'll stick. And so far, doing okay. He did get his first major league home run. He's hitting 250 as of right now. Got 4 RBIs, 4 runs scored. You already know the deal by now. A Reds hitting prospect. Go ahead and scoop him up, and probably good things will happen. And on Saturday, we had the debut of Sal Frelick in Milwaukee. Well, all he did in his first major league game was go 3 for 3, and that also included a sac fly, which if he hit it towards anybody other than Ronald Acuna, probably would have been a base hit. And then he also decided to make a great defensive play of the catch in the outfield. Look, this is one of their better prospects. Milwaukee, for whatever reason, they just can't settle on somebody in the outfield there to accompany Yelich. Joey Wiemer's pretty much become an everyday player, but then we've seen guys like Ramel Tapia, who they picked up and then just released to make way for Frelick. Blake Perkins, once in a while. Tyrone Taylor. It's like they just can't find their guy. Well, you know what? Maybe Frelick is the guy. Right now, playing right field, batting 6th in Milwaukee, pretty good spot to be. Now, Frelick doesn't have numbers that jump off the page in the minors, didn't hit for a lot of power, didn't steal a ton of bases. He's kind of a little bit of a do-it-all player, so I wouldn't expect an amazing fantasy profile. The main thing we're looking for here is the batting average and some run production. Now, a different type of prospect for the Angels, who need all the help they can get, although hey, they're starting to make a little bit of run. But with Trout still on the shelf for a while, all those injuries in the outfield, Trey Cabbage is a name that has now popped up. This would be one of your older prospects, if you will. Not really a high-end prospect to begin with. Cabbage is 26, made his major league debut. He's already got his first major league home run. This is a guy who does have quite a bit of power. He hit for 23 home runs and stole 24 bases at the AAA level this year, which is why he got the call. Now, he does look like he has a bit of Joe Adele in him, which I'm going to say is good and bad because, yeah, power and speed, maybe not quite the arm, but he also has a lot of swing and miss. High strikeout rates throughout the minors. Very small sample right now, but it's at 40% so far. He's hitting 263, but still, there's a good chance that he puts up some overs, like 0 for 3, 0 for 4 nights along the way. So expect some power here and there, but also don't be too shocked if he doesn't necessarily hit for average. Got 2 more hitters for you before we talk about starting pitching. Let me get to Luis Campusano for the Padres. Now, this is a catching prospect, one who's been highly regarded for a while, just has never really been given an extended look at the major league level. He's been on the 60-day injured list with a thumb issue. This is why it forced the Padres to move to a guy like Gary Sanchez when they needed help behind the plate. Well, Campusano ready to be activated, and he has been. Sanchez is turned back to, well, Gary Sanchez. Can't hit the ball. That power surge is pretty much over. He's now batting 191, which is pretty much what we should expect from Gary Sanchez. So now Campusano has a chance to help this team that is desperately trying to make a run so they can make the postseason. He's got great raw power himself. Already has 2 home runs and 37 plate appearances. Definitely worth taking a chance on if you're in a 2-catcher league. Almost a must add. And now let's go back to Washington for one more hitter. And I will say though, although you did move to the nation's capital, you're still always going to be a Canadian team to me. All right, but the Nats player I want to talk about is Jeimer Candelario. Now, he's a guy who really isn't exciting. He's kind of more just an accumulator. You know, he's got some decent counting stats just because he's out there every day. He's got decent power. The average is average, 257. He's never been a high average hitter. Adequate tools. His fielding has improved, but you don't care about that. He's not on a great team. The thing is, that could change for 2 reasons. First of all, rumored to be on the block because the trade deadline is coming up and a lot of teams could use a corner infielder with some power. And he is a guy who's in a contract year, so not only looking to prove himself the way he's been doing with Washington, but could be a guy who surges through the second half. If he's in the right spot, he's got the motivation. I think it's worth taking a chance on him. Like, I've got him in a couple leagues already just because he's helping accumulate, which is very important in fantasy baseball as it is. But maybe a guy who could even do better. Before I get to the pitchers, quick reminder, if you haven't tried Rival Fantasy Sports, it's a good time right now. Join rival.com/EndgameMLB. Check it out. There's an app, of course, that you can download. Just use promo code EndgameMLB. You can get a deposit match up to $200. Fantasy bingo, head-to-head challenges, a lot of unique ways to play DFS, which will be even better down the stretch, so try it out. All right, here's a guy that I was also maybe a little too high on in the preseason, but maybe now, second half, things will be better for Grayson Rodriguez. He actually had several quality starts before his demotion, lost a little bit of control and was hit hard, got sent down for a little more seasoning. Baltimore now has that luxury. They don't have to keep this long leash for their prospects because they are in first place. But Rodriguez is one of the most talented pitching prospects in the game. His first start back after the All-Star break, not too great. 4 runs, 5 innings against the Dodgers. But this last one, much better. Only gave up 2 runs in 5 2/3. That was against Tampa Bay. Looks some tough competition. I would say at this point, yeah, you're going to have to just close your eyes and ignore the season-long stats and the StatCast stats. They're ugly. If you see the glimpses of talent here, it's worth a shot. Now, I would say he's the type of player that, despite the immense talent, he's going to have his ups and his downs. So pick your spots wisely. Here's an interesting name, Chase Silseth for the LA Angels. He's coming off a start where he just whiffed 10 Yankees. Now, he was a spot starter last year for the Angels, started 7 games. It was not good. 6.59 ERA, gave up a ton of home runs. So again, we're just going to have to give him a pass and see if things are different this year. Well, not too different so far until recently, but here's what makes him interesting is it seems like he's introducing a curveball to his repertoire, which is already a little unique because he's also one of the few guys that regularly throws a splitter. You might want to take a wait and see approach unless you're really desperate for pitching help here. But man, when someone can put together that kind of performance against a pretty good offense, you have to take note. And then a guy who doesn't need much of an introduction, But don't forget about Kenta Maeda. The long road back from injury wasn't kind at first, but since he's come back in late June, he's been spot on. So far in 3 starts in the month of July, 3.31 ERA, a 24-5 strikeout to walk ratio. It shows that he's only 47% rostered across fantasy leagues. Good chance he's just out there because people have forgotten about him. Maybe not the most dynamic, but look, he's getting strikeouts again. He won't go as deep into games as he used to, but he's limiting damage. He's getting Ks. What more could you ask for? And then the bullpens are going to change like crazy after next week. But let's talk about one possible closer going forward. Has Kevin Ginkel now become the guy in Arizona? Well, it looks like it because he got back-to-back saves. Andrew Chafin has become more of a setup guy. Scott McGough had been the 9th inning guy lately, but he has been roughed up. I'm not going to put too much stock into this, but look, Ginkel has been good all year. Obviously got his manager's trust. At the moment, you're desperate for saves, go ahead and scoop them up. Those are some players that could become huge additions to your team through the second half. Don't forget, I already broke down 5 players that I think could take that next step forward and help you win your league in the second half. If you missed it, check it out right here.